It seems to have been a very hellish financial year. With us in studio to unpack that, we have Nazmeera Moola, who is the co-head of fixed income at Investec Asset Management. Welcome, Nazmeera.
Thank you, Mashvika. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. Nazmeera, where did it all go wrong and where do we see this heading?
Mashvika, I think the first thing is it didn't all start in 2017. There's been a gradual deterioration both internationally and locally over the course of the last couple of years. If you think about it, Donald Trump was elected in November 2016. We came into the year with Donald Trump as America's president, and every absurd action he's taken since then has only fed into the problems we're facing worldwide in terms of the geopolitical environment. But locally, I think the worst point for me was the cabinet reshuffle at the end of March. That was the point at which South Africa's problems tipped over from being manageable to being very significant. We had several ratings downgrades follow. You've seen parastatal companies like Transnet, which could issue in the local markets earlier, just being unable to issue. Complete lack of liquidity in the state-owned company space. And then the biggest problem is this loss of confidence we've seen, both by households and by companies. And that's resulted in a lack of fixed investment by the private sector, but by the household sector, individuals are just not spending as much as they would have previously. And that's resulted in weaker growth and weaker tax collections.
Yes, and the weaker growth definitely seems to be a problem. What do you think we could be doing there?
The single thing we need to do is restore confidence, and starts off with the household sector. And given the problems that we're seeing both in the private sector and the public sector, it's quite difficult to tell households, don't worry, please go spend some more money, please buy another car, or please buy some furniture. Because they're looking at what's happening at Eskom or what's happening at Steinhoff and wondering, is there anything we can cling on to as a source of safety and surety at this point in time?
And I think the expectation, the South African expectation that it's going to get better and people are going to step up and the Eskom board is going to be changed and this is going to be done. And yet nobody seems to be really stepping up and saying, you know what, we are making the change. Do you see us recovering as a country? Do you see the change coming?
I think we need to get the ANC's elective conference out of the way. I think what's happening right now, particularly in the public sector space, is complete sclerosis. Nobody knows what is going to happen next week at the ANC's conference, so as a result, nobody wants to make any decisions. Nobody wants to take any risks, and there's a vacuum in leadership as a result. And the key economic decisions that need to be made, for example, an Eskom board with some credibility, they're just not getting made. So we get this holding pattern board that was recently appointed, which consists mostly of the old board.
Yes, there was no real change. The very same with the midterm budget policy statement. There was nothing concrete going forward. There was nothing telling us this is what we need to be doing and this is what we're going to be doing to get our economy back on track.
All the medium-term budget policy statement did was it mark to market the fact that tax revenues were going to disappoint. There was nothing else there, because for anything else to happen, you needed the rest of cabinet to make decisions, to decide if they were brave enough to implement a VAT hike or significant spending cuts or whatever it was that was going to help compress this large fiscal deficit. And there was just no willingness to do that. Then 2 weeks after the MTBPS, we suddenly have the president talking about free higher education.
Without taking any budgetary processes into account.
Exactly. And that's my single biggest concern, is you have a budgetary process that would have kicked off in June, July, and if free higher education was a priority for the president, it should have gone into that process. We should have made decisions as a country on what we were giving up in order to fund the free higher education. I'm not against making tertiary education more affordable. I'm just saying it needs to be done in the context of a sound budget process, because right now it's not affordable. Right now, the only reason we've been able to finance our budget deficit this year is foreign investors have pumped $65 billion into emerging market local currency debt through the course of 2017. Of that, South Africa is roughly 10% of benchmark. So call it $6 billion, maybe a bit less because most people are underweight. That's what has funded our budget deficit. Those foreign flows stop coming in and the government will have a massive problem funding its deficit.
What do you think the ratings agencies are thinking of the country right now?
I think there's a lot of concern on the institutional degradation. And I think the focus until this week, until Steinhoff, has been the degradation in the public sector. And that has been significant. I think if you look back to a year ago, the Office of the Public Protector was highly respected. Now we have the Reserve Bank taking the current Public Protector to court in order to declare her actions almost illegal. I'm not sure the exact legal term, but it amounts to me like a complete abuse of her office. So that's one key institution which we could depend on, which is no longer able from the looks of it.
It seems to be a real disintegration.
And then the other one that really worries me as an economist is the National Treasury. This is an institution the ANC government built post-1994 quite painstakingly. And you had an immense depth of talent coming through. It was run by really amazing people. And what's happened since the cabinet reshuffle is an erosion in the quality of some of the key senior people because people have left. I still think they're great people there, they just don't have the experience. The new Director General is a fantastic public servant. He just doesn't have the same depth of experience as Lungisa Fuzile did.
Thank you so much, Nazmeera. We'll definitely keep our eye on the rest of the year. Not too much to go still, but so much can happen.
Unfortunately, that is true. Hopefully it's more good than bad.
Hopefully.